Little did you know there's a British guy named John Jarvis that does something called WorkSmart, and he's on LinkedIn.
Really?
And for today, we do have that John Jarvis with WorkSmart. So we're going to hear from John on what it's like with the hybrid office, working remote and such, because things surely have changed since the last year and a half with COVID. So John, it's all yours.
Thank you. So yeah, this is something that Hal and I have talked about a few times, and we thought would be a good topic to bring up for discussion. I want to sort of start with, who I am. This is John Jarvis. So I'm a senior business advisor at WorkSmart. That means I meet a lot of people, and it means that I listen to a lot of hopes and fears and anxieties about their business, but not necessarily IT, but really what I want to discover is what is their business doing and where is it going, and then eventually how is IT going to support those initiatives. So I've studied technology for a while. Most of my background is in consulting, not in sales, but I've kind of approached sales from that standpoint. Worked primarily with nonprofit organizations. I have a passion for working with them. They are in many ways a greater challenge. And nonprofit organizations don't need less than for-profit companies do. They genuinely need more. They do it very different ways. So I joined a managed services provider in 2019 to really kind of get at one of the biggest problems and most consistent problems I saw across both nonprofit and for-profit companies, which was planning and failure to plan and budget for IT. That they knew that they needed to, they didn't really know how, and a lot of companies and nonprofits were just making up a number, throwing it into their budget, and it wasn't based on anything realistic. So, I think a managed services provider can, beyond the day-to-day reactive things, beyond the, hardware, software, proactive things, get at the strategic planning and the budgeting and really become that higher level CTO, CIO for your business. Little bit of information about WorkSmart. So we are now part of the WorkSmart family as of last March. The company's headquartered out of Raleigh. However, we have a sizable presence, about 25 people in Atlanta, and we're growing. And basically my charge is to grow into the Atlanta market, which is huge. And the way we do that is we keep our service teams local. So, our customers in Atlanta don't work with engineers in North Carolina and, vice versa. I just mentioned a couple of these things. This is what a managed services provider does. We have the help desk to handle all of the reactive help desk calls. And then, of course, we have proactive things that we're doing all the time. And really where I come in, before a sale, during a sale, is in that IT business consulting, where it requires a sort of a more business analytics to look at what is the company doing and keep the direction where we're implementing tools to come from those business needs and not from the technology driving the business. Okay, so it wouldn't be a Out2Lunch without a survey. So I wanted to make sure to throw one in. Who's got, show me A, B, C, or D during the onset of the pandemic? This is in the, it feels like way longer ago than it was. It was 18 months ago. But in the onset of the pandemic, what percentage of full-time workers continued working from home? And Hal, you're gonna have to call it out. I can't see the chat.
Jared, you usually watch it.
I can do it. I got it. Let's see. I guess C, Uli C, Lee A. Hal, did you answer?
Yeah, just an A.
All right.
A. All right.
70%. Now, and that's a number across a lot of different industries. For us, it was almost all. So 85% of WorkSmart customers were fully remote in the first week. And then we had another 10 to 13% of customers that were remote by the end of the month. And which March 2020 was absolutely just a nonstop fire alarm for us, and moving people out of the office and into working from home. So how do we do that? We're going to talk a little bit about the technology. We're going to start with sort of like the hard, concrete stuff, and then what we're going to be left with once we identify all these is we're going to be left with some soft intangibles that I want us to discuss. So number one, heavy reliance on cloud technology and communication right out of the gate. Secure remote connections into in-office resources and the prevalence of mobile computing. So those 85% of folks, they grabbed their laptops, they went home. A lot of them didn't have, if they didn't have local servers, and they were doing everything inside the cloud. They were in Salesforce, they're in OneDrive and SharePoint. They moved out, and that for a lot of them that was very, very useful. And for the ones that didn't have firewalls with VPN set up in their office to reach their in-office server, we did a lot of those projects. So excellent, thank you technology. Had the pandemic happened 10 years prior, we would not have responded the same way. It would have been an absolute shutdown. The technology would not have been there. And our response as folks in business, but even as a city or even as a country, I think would be very, very different if we didn't have these things in place. However, when we implemented those, we got people physically out of their office and sent home to continue working. However, we opened up all kinds of immediate IT risks. So our heavy reliance on cloud and technology and communication. Zoom and Microsoft Teams did a fantastic job of being available and suddenly seeing increased user numbers like in the millions, and daily users of like these platforms. That rapid growth caused crashes and outages, and there was no plan. A lot of our businesses and our customers barely had a plan on how they were going to get everybody pushed onto these platforms, let alone what would happen if they weren't there. And so strategically, we were in a little bit of a tailspin where we put something together that worked, and but we struggled much slower to follow that up with a plan to what if. And I'll show you in a second, but we're talking about users on home networks. It's a problem. Also in the cloud, no tangible backups of cloud data, if at all. So we had users that were grabbing files off of the server, grabbing files off of desktops and shoving them in the cloud and saying, this is where we work now. And suddenly your file share was in the cloud, which afforded a lot of great collaboration tools, but no attention to backup. So the C-level folks that I was talking to strategically, I'm saying, you need to back this up. And their reaction was kind of similar to Microsoft's and say, well, I don't need to back it up. It's in the cloud. And Microsoft will tell you the same thing, that, you didn't need to back this up. We got it. But, there are services that will do that. And it's important to have tangible backups of your data, especially in the cloud. And then training. There was no time for training. Training came after. We implemented it. We sent everybody on Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, and there was a lot of figuring it out. And there was a lot of us doing a lot of training on how to run meetings on these platforms that just hadn't been used before. So secure remote connections in office resources. It is not just trivial to send users in one location where they're sitting behind a firewall, they're on a secured network, and then to just send them all home. Basically, we need, what would be ideal would be to put a firewall in all of their locations. But this isn't realistic, so we are looking at VPN. People were trying to get away with using remote desktop which is really notoriously weak and predictable. And so a lot of what we were doing for that 10, 15% who weren't able to just pick up all their hardware and go home was setting up VPN, deploying firewalls. Places we've been trying to put firewalls for a long time, and conversations about VPN were suddenly extremely important. So making sure that employees have a connection to those kinds of resources that is secure and encrypted is really important. The other thing that happened was offices that were, their connectivity was designed to have 100 people in it, all pulling data down into the building out from the cloud. And now suddenly that server down the hall is being accessed by 100 people outside of the office. And the connectivity wasn't really designed to do that. And then these users are on home networks that are completely insecure and frankly nearly impossible to manage. It's not realistic to put in a lot of hardware. So we're doing everything on workstations themselves. The other one was a prevalence of mobile computing. Having a laptop that you can pick up and take home is fantastic. We had orders put in March and April for over 300 laptops. And that was 300 desktop users who wanted laptops. And procuring laptops at that time was extremely difficult. January 2020 was the end of life for Windows 7. So we already had lower than usual inventory of hardware out of other distributors and manufacturers. And then that has sort of increased through this year. So 3 solutions that made it all happen and immediately exposed new dangers and new risks to all of our customers. So not only were we scrambling to get everybody out of the office, then we're following up, scrambling to keep everyone secure and productive in those environments. Okay, so I mentioned some of these. I didn't want to not tell you the answer. So the cloud services require a secondary backup, ideally in your possession. Have that data, even if it's in the cloud. We should be using VPN for everybody accessing internal resources at the office. Your in-office resources, I'd be looking at really hard and saying, does this server need to be here? What is it doing? Is it better served from a data center instead of in our office? Budgeting more than usual for laptops because the demand is so high and the supply is so low. The cost of the laptops that we're procuring is steadily going up. And anytime I talk to anybody, I want to make sure to mention multi-factor authentication because we're in a place where, users are on networks that are not securable. And, we want to make sure that any sort of breach through email, through phishing is instantly shut down by multi-factor authentication, which 2 years ago was a lot. The hoops to set that up were a little unfamiliar for a lot of our users, but now that everybody's using it for banks, using it for social media, multi-factor authentication has really shut down a lot of things, a lot of threats, and people are doing it all over the place. So they're used to doing it and we can deploy it much faster. Okay, well, we know the problems, we know the answers, and that's not so bad. What I really wanted to bring up to the group and sort of the interesting conversations that we've had about is sort of what's left. So all those were really concrete risk examples that can be identified and addressed, but we end up with there's other intangibles. There's dark matter out there in the office universe that we're having a hard time measuring. And like this guy at his desk, I can't remember, do I work at home or do I live at work? And we have seen a lot of that internally, a little bit from folks at WorkSmart, but we work with a lot of different customers who have a lot of different business models. And some users are able to be physically removed from their support and physically removed from other staff and remain productive, and others cannot. And the number of calls we can measure the upswing in tickets. Even after the immediate onset of work from home, we have users who are used to asking the person next to them, oh, how do we do this? Oh, can you come over and show me how do I connect to the right printer? That person's not there anymore. They're at home. And if they're not asking them on Teams, they're calling us and they're asking us about, how to get all of these little incidental things that we took for granted that were getting done rapidly in the office. And now there is no office and they're calling us. This second one reminds me of this guy in the cartoon. It's really dedicated space for work. I firmly believe that work from home is beneficial and it's possible to be a good thing. However, if you don't have a spare bedroom in your basement that you've converted into a home office, or you don't have a space beyond your dining room to get that work done, it imposes just massive problems that aren't being addressed by HR, by our C-level staff. We're getting there, and a lot of them are having that conversation, but it wasn't the front of mind. Everybody was looking at the work, and nobody was looking at the workspaces beyond, here's a chair budget, here's a standing desk budget, go get the physical desk components that you need, but without a place to put them, it doesn't address their needs. So we've seen the return to office for some of our customers based on that, and say, like, our staff doesn't have the room to set up an office, and we're all back in the office and we're taking physical precautions there rather than trying to continue to work from home. It just doesn't work. So one of the things that I miss is impromptu collaboration. I know how to collaborate remotely. We're doing it. We're having these meetings and we're having Zoom calls, but we're scheduling them. Collaboration is scheduled. And the difference between scheduled collaboration and impromptu collaboration, I think, is night and day. Like, scheduled collaboration has an agenda and it has a structure to it. And you go into that collaboration with the idea that we know what we're going to get out of this meeting, and here's the path we're going to walk to get to it. Impromptu collaboration happens very organically. And I know it happened in our office a lot. We had, largely a very big room with cubes, and gopher heads that would pop up. They hear somebody mention an idea, and somebody across the room says, oh, like that just, my ears perked up when you said that. I've run into that before. Very impromptu, very organic. And the quality of the collaboration, I think, is palpable when you go into a situation with any staff, not just our engineers, but a staff that is working organically towards a goal, rather than sort of predefining a goal and saying we're going to collaborate on getting this done. At least that's been our experience. And another one we talked about recently was not seeing each other work. We have an office, and I've got 4 walls and a telephone, and even if I'm not directly working with the engineers, they see me there. They know what I'm doing. I see them. I know what they're doing. I see them walking around, opening up 300 laptop boxes, getting them all set up. And I know who did what, just by virtue of being near my fellow human who is, we're all working towards the same goal. But when we're remote, no one has any idea what I'm doing, who I'm talking to, because they don't see me in the break room and I tell them how the weird call went with a prospect, or they don't tell me about what happened on a ticket, because it doesn't work like that in Teams. So I think I've tried to measure these things, so I can measure the number of tickets we get, and we look at tickets, and we can look at the type of tickets that we get. We can try to analyze trends, but we're not, we've pulled internally, and we encourage our other companies to pull internally and say, just start bringing these ideas up. And, I did have one customer whose staff did not want to engage in a poll like that because they saw it as any answer beyond I 100% want to work from home was seen as a threat to, one day being asked to be back in the office, and they didn't want that. But I think asking staff about your space, asking your staff about and your team leaders about collaboration and how are we getting that done today, and do we think that it's the same today as it was 2 years ago, and are we missing these intangible things, and getting that conversation started so that when someone says no, what can we do as essentially a support staff? I mean, we're IT staff for our company. What is it that we can provide that's missing? Is there a familiarity? Is there a way to teach our customers how to use Zoom, to use breakout rooms? When we have a staff meeting internally, we have 115 people on the call. So we'll have a staff meeting or a staff celebration lunch, and all the social Zoom events that we've accumulated over the last year or so, and then show them how to break out into smaller groups so that these 5, 6, 8 people can engage in a conversation rather than everything being one directional from whoever's speaking and presenting at the meeting. And we've recorded how we've done that. We've shared it with other customers, and we've shown them, step by step, how to use this technology to try to break some of that into some of these intangibles and get some of that back.
Hey, John, so being that this is our lunch break, you set us up with a lot of good ideas and questions. To your point, yes, it's working. Without technology, we would have gotten nowhere. And I think for everybody's sake, we should take those in consideration and then figure out how to have a conversation with you or each other. Do you see me at work? Am I collaborating, and how to do this? Because there is a big cultural issue that, I know Uli, for example, is always talking about whether the people need to get together in the same room to work or the remote, because she's got a real mix. So with that, does anybody else have any comments for John before we wrap up? Because it is getting late.
I don't have a comment for John, but I do have a comment for everybody here. So I guess that would include John. We have a lunch, my company does, next Wednesday, the 17th, from 11:30 to 1 at Cabernet. And it's with a new partner. And we're just going to be doing a quick, setup, chat, and then you get a 4-course meal. So if you guys want to come down to Cabernet, please send me your email, say that you're part of Out2Lunch, and Hal, you especially, because we've been trying to meet for months and months.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
it's Kurt, K-U-R-T, at infosmarttech.com. And if you guys haven't heard of Cabernet, I would look it up. And it's a wonderful